Hello, friends, and let's get started.
The club breathed to the beat of the music, the bass vibrating deafeningly. The lights flashed in a chaotic rhythm, mixing with the smoke that drifted to the floor. The crowd moved in waves, blending into a single organism that greedily absorbed the alcohol and the frenzied rhythm. Lauren leaned over to her friend, laughing at some silliness. In her hands was a tall glass of Prosecco, with bubbles floating in it, clinging to the walls like the last shards of sanity. She was already pleasantly drunk, not to the point of unconsciousness, but to that sweet state where the body was light, the movements smooth, and the soul felt damn good. "Another round," Tara shouted, brushing a strand from her face. Her dark eyes glistened with excitement. They drank, glasses clinking against the table. Lauren ran her tongue over her lips, savoring the tart taste of the sparkling wine. The music was enveloping, hypnotizing. She loved to dance, especially on nights like this, when she didn't have to think, when she could just dissolve into this endless flow of movement and sound. "Let's dance," Cindy shouted, and without waiting for a response, she grabbed Lauren's arm, pulling her into the crowd. At first, it was just a rhythm that obeyed the body. The gentle swaying of her hips, the lazy movements of her arms, the laughter flaring on her lips. Then someone picked her up by the waist, and she didn't resist. She didn't even see his face at once, just felt himself pressed against her, his hands on her thighs, his hot breath on her cheek. And that's when the real magic began. He moved confidently, lightly, his palms sliding over her body, but without haste, with a playful innuendo that was impossible not to understand. Lauren didn't pull away. On the contrary, she pressed closer, head tilted back, feeling the familiar arousal spreading through her body. A whisper in her ear, she couldn't make out the words, but they didn't matter. What mattered was the intonation. His voice was low, slightly husky. "You move well," he said. She smiled, her fingers sliding down his arm, covering his wrist. He was hot, and the alcohol made his skin sensitive. "Thank you," she said and licked her lips. "You too, handsome." Her body adjusted itself to the rhythm. They moved as if they'd known each other for a long time. The stranger's hand slid playfully lower, fingers tightening on her thigh, a slight provocation, a test. She didn't pull them away. On the contrary, her fingers gripped his palm a little harder. "Are you alone here?" She laughed. Too loud, too playful. "No." He leaned a little closer. Cindy's laughter somewhere nearby, phones flashing, faces flickering. The club was buzzing, alive, demanding victims and giving them oblivion. And no one, not Lauren or her friends, noticed when her phone screen flashed. A few miles away from the club, in the semi-darkness of the bedroom, Jake lay on the couch, leisurely scrolling through the news feed on his phone. The TV was blaring something in the background, but he hadn't paid attention to it for about 10 minutes. It had been a long day, but nothing special. Work, a couple meetings, a workout. Lauren had gone to see her friends, and she'd told him she'd be late. He didn't mind, even hugged her goodbye. For a long time, he believed they were doing well. Yes, they had their little quarrels, but what family doesn't have them? He knew she had her outbursts, irritation, longing, but he thought they were temporary. The phone screen suddenly flashed with a new notification. Lauren has started a live stream. He raised an eyebrow. Not that she often posted anything on social media, much less live-streamed it. Jake clicked the notification thoughtfully, expecting to see her smarmy, "Hey girls," and a couple glasses of Prosecco in the frame. But the picture that opened before him took him by surprise. A club, bright flashes of light, the crowd, the humming music, and her. Lauren was dancing in the center of the frame, arching her back, throwing her head back. She wasn't alone. There was some guy standing behind her, his hands on her hips, confident, without the slightest shadow of doubt. They were moving too close. Jake's eyes went dark. He didn't even immediately realize he'd been holding his breath. She wrapped her arms around the bastard's neck, her fingers sliding lightly over his shoulders, lips ajar, the familiar look that was supposed to be just for him. Jake sat up, setting his feet on the floor, feeling a wave of ice run down his back. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. A stranger's hands slid around his wife's waist. She didn't recoil, didn't protest. No. She leaned closer, said something in the bastard's ear. And then the laughter. He could feel it even through the phone. Jake pressed the mute button. Voices mingled with the droning music, but a distinct one broke through the noise. So what if I'm married? The important thing is to have fun. He was stunned. His whole body tensed. Fire was boiling in his chest, but it was not the kind of fire that burns out instantly. This flame was slow, enveloping, annihilating. His head was buzzing. He stared at the screen, but he could no longer see the picture, only feel something in him cracking, breaking. And then he saw the comments. Wow, Lauren. Holy shit. Did Jake see that? Beautiful couple. Damn, she's married. Jake, man, you in here? Someone had remembered he existed. One of their mutual acquaintances. Red circles flashed in Jake's eyes. Everyone can see. He jumped up. The phone nearly flew out of his hands, but he held it up, still unable to believe what was happening. The wife. Lauren. His Lauren. She was hugging another man on live TV. Not in secret. In front of everyone. Jake abruptly turned off the broadcast, tossed his phone on the couch, and took a step back. Impossible. He ran his palm over his face, trying to cool his head. But it wasn't working. Her voice, that damn voice, full of flirtation and laughter, had already cut into his mind like a splinter under his skin. So what if I'm married? It's all about having fun. He gritted his teeth. Okay, have fun. Jake unclenched his fists and strode into the bedroom. He acted without emotion, without hysteria. He opened the closet, pulled out a suitcase, tossed it on the bed. Then he opened the doors slowly, stacked things methodically. T-shirts, jeans, shirts, papers, everything he needed. He didn't expect an explanation. There was nothing to explain. Jake stood in the bedroom, holding the shirt in his hands, but never putting it in his suitcase. His temples were pounding. His breathing was even, but somewhere deep inside pulsed a feeling he couldn't yet identify. It wasn't just anger. It was something cold, rational, something that cast emotion aside, leaving only one thing: action. He looked at the suitcase. What was next? Just leave? Spend a night in a motel, and then come back and start the long, pointless process of sorting things out? No, he wasn't going to leave Lauren any room to maneuver. Jake walked slowly out of the bedroom, headed for the study, turned on his laptop. The screen flashed, lit up with the familiar desktop. His hands moved almost mechanically. A search string, a real estate website, a private office, a click of keys, a new application. He typed quickly, not doubting every word, not giving himself time to think. Urgent. I'm selling a house. Excellent condition. Fully furnished. You can move in right away. The reason: the former owner prefers to live in clubs. Brevity is the sister of contempt. He attached photos he already had in his files, pictures from the agency taken a year ago when they were thinking of moving. It was the same, nothing had changed. The house was beautiful, cozy. It was warm. It was... Click. The ad went online. He leaned back in his chair, ran his palms over his face. A deep breath. But that wasn't all. Jake turned back to the laptop again, opened the social network. History. Lauren's live stream. The video had already saved automatically. He knew that until it was deleted, hundreds, maybe thousands of people could see it. He pressed repeat, expanded it to full screen. Bright flashes of light, loud music. She's in the center of the frame, her arms around the stranger's neck, the stranger holding her tightly around the waist. The movements too fluid, too coherent. And her voice. So what if I'm married? The important thing is to have fun. Click. The speakers turned the sound up a little louder. Jake nodded to himself. Let him see. Let him hear. With one last movement, he picked up his suitcase and headed for the exit. The house he'd built with her, the house he'd once been happy in, now seemed just a box of bricks, soaked in lies. He put on his shoes, threw on his jacket, and ran his hand over his chin, as if assessing his own feelings. There was no reason to linger. Jake opened the door, stepped outside. The click of the lock. Silence. Lauren woke to a sharp jolt in her temples. Her head was buzzing. Her mouth was dry. Her body felt shattered, as if she'd been knocked down and put back up again for hours on end. She groaned, trying to open her eyes, but the light shining through the thick curtains was too bright. Where was she? Her eyelids drooped, and her thoughts were confused, but gradually her consciousness began to emerge from the drunken stupor. The smell of foreign male cologne, the warmth of another man's body next to her, something heavy thrown around her waist. Lauren tensed. A sharp inhale. Her heart jumped to her throat. She wasn't alone in the bed. Cautiously, she turned her head. A man, face fuzzy, smudged through the hangover haze. Dark hair, tan skin, lightly unshaven. The blanket had slipped off, exposing a shoulder and a little further. No. Memory gave only fragments. The dancing, the flashes of light, the hot breath at her neck, the strong hands on her waist. Alcoholic dizziness. Laughter, the warmth of lips. Someone else's lips. Lauren slowly, through force, pulled his arm off her waist and lifted herself up in the bed. The room was unfamiliar, the interior cheap. A hotel? No, more like someone's rented loft, too impersonal for permanent housing. The phone. Where's the phone? She reached for the nightstand, but her fingers stumbled into emptiness. A deafening alarm began to echo in her head, interrupting the throbbing pain. She scurried to the edge of the bed, nearly falling over when her legs failed and buckled. At that moment, the stranger stirred, stretching sleepily. Hey, what are you doing? The voice was husky, hoarse. Lauren froze, turning around. Her skin was covered in a light sweat. Where's my phone? His voice trailed off, no longer playful, just tense. He frowned, propping himself up on an elbow, looking around the room lazily. I have no idea. You either dropped it or dash, he yawned, smiling carelessly. Relax. The morning was just beginning. Lauren squeezed her eyes shut, cursing herself. The phone. She spotted it on the floor, near the chair. Picked it up, but the screen was dead. Dead. Shit. She exhaled, groping the nightstand for a charger, but of course it wasn't there. She didn't know why panic was squeezing her throat. Yes, the morning hadn't gone well, but she was an adult, entitled to party. Jake wouldn't find out. The thought hit suddenly like an icy wave. She should go home, shower, change, wipe away the remnants of this nightmare, and pretend it never happened. She grabbed her clothes and pulled them on in a hurry while the man in the bed watched with lazy interest. You just gonna leave like that, without breakfast? He grinned at her. Lauren didn't answer. She sprinted out of the room, slamming the door behind her, and ran down the stairs, feeling the fear creeping closer. She didn't know what awaited her, but her gut told her something had gone wrong. The drive home took forever. She sat silently in the cab, swaying in time with the sharp turns. The phone, plugged into the charger, finally came to life, making a vibrating sound as it turned on. And then, a continuous cannonade of notifications. Calls, messages, chats flashed, filling the screen. God, she breathed out. Her fingers trembled as she started scrolling through the feed. 50+ missed ones from Jake. 13 from Cindy. 5 from his mother. 2 from his mother. She clicked on the messages. Cindy, did you see what happened? Oh my God, Lauren. Tara, your husband. Shit, I'm so sorry. Cindy, are you okay? Are you even alive? Unknown number. You know you're a celebrity now, right? She didn't understand. Her heart was pounding, her fingers frantically scrolling the screen until she saw the link. A recording of the broadcast. The blood rushed from her face. No. She clicked the link slowly. The video loaded. Bright flashes of light, music, drunken laughter. Her, dancing in someone else's arms. Heated and flirtatious. Snuggling closer, letting a man she didn't even remember into her private zone. And then the words. Her voice, clear, ringing, full of playful defiance. So what if I'm married? It's all about having fun. Lauren dropped the phone, but he managed to start the tape again. The video went round and round. So what if I'm married? The important thing is to have fun. The cab stopped abruptly outside the house. Lauren didn't move. She realized she was in trouble. Lauren was in a hurry, her heels clacking on the sidewalk, breaking the morning silence. Her head was buzzing after a sleepless night, but she didn't have time to think about how she'd ended up in that damn room or why everything in her life had gone so wrong. Something had to be done right away, Something had to be done. Something had to be explained. Something had to be rescued. Something had to be smoothed out. Just around the corner, hidden by tall trees, stood their house. In the distance came the sound of a car driving down a nearby street. Lauren glanced at it, then returned her gaze to the door. As she approached, she was already pulling out her keys, trying to think of what to say. Her heart was pounding somewhere in her throat. "Jake, there's been a misunderstanding. I was drunk. It was just a joke." But neither phrase seemed convincing. She put the key in the keyhole, turned it. The door clicked, but it didn't open. She had to push it slightly with her shoulder. Then she froze on the threshold. The house was empty. The furniture was still there, but it looked as if everything had faded, lost its life. There was no sound, not the familiar smell of freshly ground coffee, not Jake's muffled footsteps. There was a lone suitcase in the hallway. His suitcase. A laptop glowed on the desk. She took an uncertain step forward, stretching her hand out to the screen, where she immediately recognized the familiar image. Her airwaves. Dancing, laughter, flashes of light. The frames moved smoothly, repeating over and over like a taunt. Lauren pitched backward, nearly stumbling. Her gaze fell to the refrigerator, where a piece of paper was pinned. Jake's handwriting. She stepped closer, fingers trembling as she read. "The house is for sale. I hope you pack up quickly." She felt her legs grow cotton and the air in her lungs grow heavy. She grabbed the back of her chair to keep from falling, her heart pounding loudly, unevenly. And then she heard his footsteps. Jake came in from the living room. He stopped in the doorway, watching her. Silence hung between them, thick as wax. He didn't say anything at once, just stared, eyes cold. She couldn't bear to look at him, averted her eyes. "How was your morning, Lauren?" He finally spoke. His voice was steady, but every word sounded like a blow. "Jake, it was a mistake," she stammered, not knowing how to get her thoughts together. He didn't move. Not even an eyebrow twitched. Only a slight shake of his head, as if speaking to himself. "It was a mistake to marry you." His voice didn't change, but he sounded icy. He walked silently to the door, determined, cold, as if he had known what he would do long ago. "Stop. I can explain." She rushed toward him, but he didn't even turn around. He opened the door, stepped over the threshold, and closed it in her face. Lauren froze. Her hands slowly lowered. Her feet took a step back on their own. She looked around, as if none of this was real, as if she could still wake up. But the morning, cruel and unforgiving, was just beginning. Lauren opened the door and ran out to follow Jake. In the driveway, he was already walking to his car. She could see his broad back and tightly clenched fists. He didn't turn around. "Jake!" she shouted, almost breaking her voice. "Wait, please wait." He stopped, but didn't turn around. "What now?" His voice sounded muffled. I don't know how it happened." Lauren took a step forward. Her heart was pounding so hard that the words came out of her throat haphazardly, one after the other. "It was just a misunderstanding. I had too much to drink. I wasn't thinking." Jake turned around sharply. There was no anger on his face, but that look was much scarier. "Misunderstanding?" He repeated, as if pondering the meaning of the word. "Are you seriously calling it that?" Lauren was silent, staring at his tense face. She couldn't find the words. "Tell me, Lauren, have you forgotten that you're married? Or do you just not care?" He spoke softly, without shouting, but every word cut to the core. "You stood there, dancing, clinging to him, and then you said, 'The important thing is to have fun.' You really think this is a misunderstanding?" I just wanted to relax, you know." She took a step closer, her arms outstretched as if begging. "It was just a dance. I didn't know that." He interrupted. "What?" He interrupted. "What I'd see. That would get on the air. If no one found out, you wouldn't even feel guilty, would you?" "No, not like that." Lauren screamed, feeling tears come to her eyes. "I was confused. I missed the warmth, the attention. Jake, I didn't mean to hurt you." He laughed, but it was empty, cold. "Warmth? Attention?" He asked again. "You know what the problem is, Lauren? I would have given you all of that. I was there for you. But you chose to get it from another man in front of everyone who knew us in any way. It's not like that. It's all wrong." She stepped closer, but he stepped back. No, Lauren, it is exactly like this. His voice was quieter, but it was even harsher. I loved you. You were everything to me. And now, I have nothing more to say to you. He turned and headed for the car. Lauren rushed after him. Don't go. Jake, please. Jake, I'm gonna fix this. I'll prove it doesn't mean anything. He yanked his hand away, turned one last time. You don't have to prove anything, Lauren. You've already said it all. He got into the car, slammed the door, and started the engine. Lauren stood in the driveway, watching his car drive off into the distance, leaving behind only a cloud of dust and shards of what had once been their lives. Her legs shook, her hands trembled. An emptiness was growing in her chest that neither panic nor tears could fill. She turned around and walked slowly back into the house. It was quiet inside. The laptop was still open on the kitchen table, and the screen flickered. The video of her laughing, cuddling with a stranger played over and over in endless replay. Lauren swallowed. At that moment, her phone vibrated in her pocket. She flinched, pulled it out with trembling fingers. A new notification. She breathed faster. It rang in her head. A message from her mother-in-law. Her fingers froze over the screen as if her body was trying to keep her from reading it. But she already knew what would be there. She opened it. So what if you're married? The important thing is to have fun. Her eyes raced across the screen. Her eyelids fluttered. Her heart pounded in her ears. She'd lost everything. Lauren sank slowly to the floor, the phone falling out of her fingers and hitting the wooden boards with a thud. The house was quiet again. A week had passed. The house that had once been their joint fortress now belonged to other people. The real estate agent Jake had hired the same night after the broadcast had worked quick sale, good price, no delays. 3 days later, the deal was already closed, and the things Lauren had left behind were ruthlessly boxed up and given to her through acquaintances. She couldn't even walk down that street anymore. Jake disappeared from her life as easily as a number in her contacts is erased. The divorce was filed the day after the house was sold. No talking, no yelling, no explanation. Jake didn't want to hear her excuses. He didn't answer the phone, didn't read the messages. He just put a stop to it, final and irrevocable. After signing the papers, Lauren stared at them for a long time, hoping it was just a bad dream. But dreams don't leave you with social media reminders. That same day on her page, someone posted a recording of the broadcast again. The comments didn't subside. Someone laughed, someone judged, someone gloated. Was it fun? How was it without your husband? Cozy. Don't worry, the clubs are still open. There was nothing left of her old life. The friend she'd been out with that night had suddenly disappeared, as if erased with an eraser. Colleagues at work looked at her, but didn't speak aloud. Even her mother didn't know how to talk to her. And Jake. 2 months after the divorce, someone she knew sent her a photo. He wasn't alone. Sitting in a cozy cafe, a beautiful girl across from him, his smile was real, his eyes shining. A completely different look, one that used to be just for her. Lauren closed her phone, tossed it aside, and stared into the void for a long time. There was nothing else she could do to fix it. And that's where today's story ends. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and comment. We'd love to discuss this story with you. See you in the next video.